Welcome back, I'm Raiden from Blue Gaming, and this week on Raiden's Early Access Reviews, I'm taking a look at Satisfactory, the first Epic Game Store exclusive that I've covered on this channel. Since this is a review covering an Epic Game Store exclusive, I will be talking about that exclusivity, but I will save it for the end of the video. Now, before we get in, there's two things that I need to say. The first one is that I did receive a code to review this game for you guys, so keep that in mind whenever I say anything about the game, although by the end, hopefully you'll see that that doesn't really affect my judgment much. And also, make sure to hit the subscribe button and enable notifications if you want to be notified when I upload the next installment of Raiden Reviews. Now, let's get into this review of Satisfactory, starting, as always, with graphics. The first thing I want to talk about in this category is the UI. I've heard some people talk about how it looks unfinished and whatnot, but personally, I think that the UI looks very, very good. It fits really well with the utilitarian design of pretty much the entire rest of the game. The only thing that I would change about the UI is the quick select buttons at the bottom. It is not exactly the easiest thing to put new items on those quick select buttons. So besides that, I really love the UI, and I really hope that they don't change it. I just like how simple it is, even though there are some people saying that it looks unfinished. Besides that, I haven't heard any other complaints about the visuals of the game, and I have none myself. I really like the sort of art style that they have here with the pseudo-realistic stuff. It really reminds me of Subnautica. I know a lot of other indie games have used an art style similar to this, but really the two that spring into my mind that are super similar are Subnautica and this. But now let's talk about the technical aspect, which does have a few issues. The big problem that I have is occasional frame drops. It's usually when I'm first starting out and it's loading in some stuff, but occasionally when I run away from an object and then back towards it, it kind of stutters just a little bit for a few seconds. You might see it occasionally in the background footage. And this is really kind of a problem because in the footage that you're seeing, I'm running quite a small operation, but I've seen some factories that are much larger than this, and they have a substantially more frame drops than I do. And as they add more things in with the early access, there's going to be larger and larger factories, which will lead to more and more frame drops. So I think they need to kind of fix this problem sooner than later, because it's just going to keep getting worse and worse. Besides those occasional frame drops, the game ran absolutely fine, and I had plenty of power left in my computer, so I think that you could actually run this game on some lower-end machines and still get decent performance out of it besides those occasional frame drops. Next, let's move on to sound, music, and voice. Satisfactory is a surprisingly quiet game, considering all that's going on. All of the machines in the game make barely any sound, including the giant space elevator and the numerous generators that I have around the place. Even the shuttlecraft that takes off into space and comes back down makes almost no sound at all. I actually really liked the lack of sound that these machines made, though. I've been inside some pretty busy factories, and it can get really loud, and so thankfully, Here, to keep with the kind of calming gameplay, they added in the calming sounds, which is a stark contrast from actual factories if you've been inside them. In fact, the loudest thing in this game is clicking around in the menus, and I've never had to say this before, but I actually really hated the sound of clicking around in the menus. It's this kind of loud, high-pitched metallic click, and I really don't like the way that it sounds. Although it doesn't stop me from playing the game or enjoying the game, it's just those clicks really kind of take me out of the moment, and I don't know, I've never really said for a game to change the way that its click sounds before, but this is going to be the first one where I say that. Next, let's move on to talking about the game's music, which I have nothing but good things to say about. It's this kind of lo-fi electronic music that is absolutely amazing to listen to. It's just this nice, calming background music, and honestly, I could listen to this outside of Satisfactory. It's just that good. If I had to choose some sort of downside, it would be that there's only like 3 or 4 different songs, and they're all on a loop. Granted, when I'm playing, I can never actually hear the songs loop, so it doesn't actually get annoying, but if I had to choose something, I would wish that there was more songs. Next, let's talk about the voice acting in the game, of which there's only one voice actor, or actress in this case, and she plays the AI that you hear occasionally as kind of like your guide. Now, I'm not saying that she did a bad job at it, but the effects that they added onto her voice to make it sound more robotic definitely turned up the annoying factor to 11. Thankfully, though, during typical gameplay, you don't actually hear from the AI that much. The only times that you really hear from her a bunch is when you're starting a new game, or when you're doing some very specific tasks. Next, let's move on to talking about the story, of which it's not really that important. It is given to you, but then quickly it doesn't really matter about the rest of the game. You play as an engineer for the Fix-It company, and you are dropped on an alien planet, and you have to use a handful of tools and harvest the planet's natural resources to construct a complex factory for automating all the resources, which will eventually be built into a space elevator and begin a super secret project assembly. And that is pretty much all the story that we have so far in Satisfactory. Since the game is in early access, they can still expand the story quite a bit, which I really hope that they do, because they kind of give you this whole big exposition dump in the first 5 minutes of the game, and then they don't really come back and talk about it at all while you're actually playing the game. And speaking of playing the game, let's move on to talking about gameplay. As you can see from the background footage, this game is focused on making a factory, and I'll just kind of go through a process and kind of tell you what you do with the game. So say I wanted to make some armored plates, because you need them to build something. So the process that you would have to do yourself would be mine the iron ore, mine a lot of it, then smelt all of that iron ore into iron ingots, and then you take some of those iron ingots, turn them into iron plates, you take other iron ingots, and you put them into iron rods. You then have to take those iron rods and turn that into nails. You then combine the iron plates and the nails, and you get armored iron plates. Now, what you can do is, with machines, you can have a miner automatically mine the ore for you. You can then have a smelter turn that ore into ingots, and then you can have constructors change those ingots into different things. Repeat that process and tweak it a bit, and that's basically what you're going to be doing for most of the game. And you might be asking, what do you build towards? What are you trying to actually accomplish by building all this stuff? Well, you actually work towards milestones, which you can see in the top right, the current milestone that I have selected. Milestones are separated up into tiers. There was currently 6 tiers of milestones that you can go through, and each tier has 3 to 4 different milestones. You don't have to complete all the milestones in one tier to move on to the next. The way that it works is you first unlock tier 1 and 2 as your kind of tutorial. Then once you build the space elevator, you get tiers 3 and 4. And then once you upgrade the space elevator, you get 5 and 6. Sadly though, and one of the biggest problems that I have with this game is that once you complete all the milestones and get up to tier 6 and you really have everything, there's literally nothing else to do. You are merely building for the sake of building, and I will talk about that a little bit later when I give this game a score. But that's one of the really big contributing factors, is that there's nothing else to really do. And I found that when you're working through tiers 5 and 6, you're not really doing that much new. You're kind of just optimizing stuff and letting things run its course because you need so many materials. Besides building, the game also has combat with the native wildlife of the planet, but this isn't really a big part of the game, and honestly, I've only gotten into a fight with an animal maybe 4 or 5 times, and really all that you do is you have this little like shocking stick and you hit the animal 3 times and then it just falls over dead. It doesn't really react whenever you hit it. Granted, you lose health whenever you get hit, but it's not really that big of a fight. Like, the game doesn't even like act like you're in a fight. The music doesn't get intense or anything, and really it's just a minor inconvenience. Now let's go on to talk about my final thoughts, and let's give this game a score. To start out, I need to address what I said in the beginning. This is the first Epic Game Store exclusive that I've covered, and I kind of need to talk about the Epic Game Store because it is a contention for many people. Personally, for multiple reasons, I will not be buying anything from the Epic Game Store. I would be lying if I didn't say I was still salty about what happened with Metro Exodus. I think that taking a game off of the Steam storefront 2 weeks from its release is absolutely unacceptable. But besides that, the Epic Game Store is lacking features that even smaller launchers like Uplay and Origin have. But besides all of that, since I created my Epic Games account in late September of 2017, almost every month I have received multiple emails about unsuccessful login attempts for my Epic Games account, and they definitely weren't from me. It has been debated whether or not these emails are just a ploy to get people to enable two-factor authentication, but all it's done for me is have less confidence when buying a game at the Epic Game Store. And when you put all of those reasons together, currently I think that there's no reason to buy a game on the Epic Game Store, even if it is an Epic Game Store exclusive. But let's say that you don't care about that. How is Satisfactory on its own? I think that it's definitely not a buy it right now. I would put it more in the wait for a sale category, because even though it is quite fun, once you hit those tiers 5 and 6 for the upgrades, there's really nothing left to do, and you're just kind of sitting there twiddling your thumbs for hours on end while your factory is just building stuff for you. As time goes on and the developers add more things to Satisfactory and add more tiers and a longer game, then it will be going ever so closer to that buy category. And I have no doubt by the time that it is in full release that this will be an amazing game. But we come back to its Epic Game Store exclusivity. It's up to you whether or not you want to buy a game from the Epic Game Store or wait for its potential release on Steam. You've heard my views on the Epic Game Store and Satisfactory, and that is it for this installment of Raiden Reviews. If you liked this video, hit the like button. If you didn't, then hit the dislike button. As always, I'm Raiden from Blue Gaming, and I'll see you guys in the next one.